Hello, everybody. This is Rob with Crypto Research, and today I'm going to try to answer the question, how do you determine the value of a Bitcoin? I'm going to go over the advantages of Bitcoin over fiat, total global assets, technology adoption, some bullish factors, and try to answer the question, is Bitcoin in a bubble? So to start out, let's talk about Bitcoin compared to fiat. I expect that you know at least a little bit about Bitcoin. If you don't, I would recommend doing some research so you'll understand it, because I don't want to get into too many details trying to answer what is Bitcoin. But compared to fiat, we know that fiat is government created, generally managed through the banking system, whereas Bitcoin was created by developers using secure cryptography. It's decentralized, censorship resistant. There's no one single entity that controls it. It's very much community driven. And that's what gives it that trust factor. Fiat supply is really determined by the demand for debt. In for the U.S., an example, they have 22 trillion in debt. We know they have a lot of debt obligations in the future. There's going to be more debt, and the currency is going to grow. The people in the government that manage the currency want inflation because they believe it's consumer-driven demand by inflating the currency. So we know fiat, just even the major fiats are going to grow. In smaller countries, the money supply grows even faster. With Bitcoin, the supply is limited to 21 million. We also know that most governments actually do a really bad job of managing their fiat. The history has proven that. And believe it or not, people really know. They may not think about it, but people know that fiat's going to lose value over time. That's why everybody puts their money into the stock market and 401ks. Most people don't just leave their money in bank accounts, especially these days where there's no interest. So money is people are trying to chase returns because everyone knows over a long period of time fiat's going to lose value. So what the key to currency value really is confidence and trust. The value of a currency is based on confidence and trust, and that takes a while. The dollar has a decent amount of confidence in it, even though people know that it's going to lose value. We at least as an American, we feel that I can leave some money in my checking account and prices aren't going to go up that fast. Now, in other countries, there's no confidence and trust, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, where the government's done such a poor job of managing it, they're forced to print more money. People start realizing that the money's going to lose value, and this is what happens. So let's talk about global assets. It's easy to say Bitcoin's in this bubble because the price is high, but the price doesn't mean much when you consider there's only a $21 million supply of Bitcoin. The market cap gives you a better idea of potential for value, because the narrow money supply on its own, just global currencies, is at 36 trillion. That's not even the broad. That's the narrow money supply. That's demand deposits, paper coins. The bond market at 82 trillion. Just the U.S. stock market, the S&P 500, just the U.S. S&P 500 is 22 trillion. And gold, which is a small asset, is 7 trillion. So when you're talking about people putting money into Bitcoin, it's a very, very, very small percentage of total global assets right now. And that's a good example. I couldn't even put bonds on this chart because you wouldn't be able to see the bar in Bitcoin. But compared to just one stock, to gold, to stocks, Bitcoin is very small. And we also know the total global debt is increasing. So we know just in general across the world that the money supply will continue to increase. So let's talk a little bit about technology adoption, because like I said, trust and confidence is important. So we have to understand how technology advances. So you have the super early adopters. These are the people that bought Bitcoin and very early on, 2010, 2012. And these people were developers, engineers. These people really understood the tech behind it. The next early adopters have strong tech, but maybe they weren't developers. Usually people with a better idea of economics. I mean, real true visionaries. Then all of a sudden millennials say, millennials tend to understand tech. They've seen tech evolve with the internet and social media, so they're used to it. And so believing that a digital money could be could become something is not a tough sell to a millennial. It's why there's so many young individuals that have disposable income that are getting into Bitcoin. But then all of a sudden, when your younger brother has made a bunch of money in Bitcoin, or some of your friends have done well in Bitcoin, people get curious, and that's when Main Street starts entering, and that's when you say, "Wow, I haven't made like 6% over the past few years, and here's this young guy that's made 1,000% in the last month." It's an easy sell, and people start to notice with the way the price is constantly rising. This is where Main Street's starting to get involved, and people are starting to divert a little bit of their 401k money, a little bit of their retirement, maybe a little bit of money that's been sitting in a checking account, and gets moved over to Bitcoin and other crypto. Eventually, Wall Street gets in. We're starting to see signs of that, and once this starts becoming a thing, that's when the network effect is strong enough that you don't necessarily need that technology. But it's still early, and the fear of missing out is very, very strong. So when we talk about technology adoption, this is just a little simple visual display of how at the very beginning the users are usually people that have strong understanding of technology. This is just like with the internet. The users were in the 1980s were tech geeks and network people and people that were just chatting on CompuServe, and then eventually it got to the point where computer literate people started using the internet and signed up for an email, started loading up those America Online CDs. And eventually, all of a sudden, your friends are using email. You realize you can talk to them, so you get an email. And then you get your mom to get an email, and the next thing you know, the internet's everywhere. In terms of money, a good example would be like I remember when I first was going to put my credit card information to make an e-commerce payment. It was a leap because I was worried people were going to still be able to steal that information. I didn't want somebody out there having my credit card info. But it took a while, and as more people started doing it, you began to get comfortable. Okay, well, gosh, I just found out that 100,000 people use this e-commerce store. Well, if they can use it, then obviously it must be safe. And you no longer feel like you have to know how SSL works or how secure encrypted payments work. You just start accepting it as more people accept it. So, what are some of the bullish factors that contribute to the value of Bitcoin? Well, it's the first time we've had a currency that's not susceptible to governments and politicians and debt. People that have their own self-interest, people that want to inflate the currency. It's the first time you can actually put money into something where you're really just trusting the community and not a centralized authority. We also know that it's still a very small percentage of global assets. It's still an extreme small percentage of people that even own a portion of a Bitcoin. By nature, it's more trustworthy and less inflationary than fiat. We now see in December that 2 futures markets are opening. And a lot of people think, oh, they're just going to short it. But look, they wouldn't open a futures market if they expected the price to crash and go to zero. They're doing this because there is a strong belief and a strong demand. People want to invest in it. And people with big money don't want to invest without a hedge. That's going to be the main reason for a futures market is that, you know what, I'm going to buy this Bitcoin, but I'm still going to buy a short contract just in case something happens. It gives people, it's like buying insurance for your Bitcoin, especially if you're talking about millions of dollars. And that's just starting. We haven't even opened a CME futures market yet. That's going to be in a week. So Wall Street and Main Street are just now getting into it. And we can see this. Coinbase is the #1 app on the Apple Store this week. Coinbase is having a hard time they have to stop and redo and add more servers almost daily because they get overwhelmed. And every other exchange is having the same issue. They can't keep up with demand. We're seeing Bitcoin on the news. We're seeing it on CNBC. Charlie Lee's on CNBC. Roger Ver's on CNBC. Brian Kelly's doing a report constantly on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I mean, the network is growing. That network growth is starting to hit that curve where it can go fast. And people think that it's all of a sudden just going to go down to $1,000 or $500. That could happen, maybe. But maybe not. So is Bitcoin in a bubble? Yes, it's in a bubble, but it can go higher. It could go a lot higher before it corrects. I think it'll correct for sure. But when? I don't know. Because listen, I thought it was going to, when it was just got over $3,000, I thought it would come back down under 1,000. I thought Bitcoin was going to correct when it hit 8,000 and come back to 3 grand. Now here we are over 15,000. Will it go under 10,000? Maybe. But we don't know. Because even though it's a bubble where 3.5 billion people on this world that have internet access can buy that. It's not easy for people to buy property. It's not easy for people to buy art. It's not easy for people to even buy gold. It's not easy for people to have access to stocks. Buying a currency is relatively easy. Sure, there's a learning curve, but anybody that's living in a country where their government is adding the supply and the value of their currency is going down, really Bitcoin becomes an ideal form of store value. So I hope this was helpful. It just gives you some idea of how you could think about how you might value Bitcoin. If you like this, please give me a like. You can subscribe. I plan to do more research topics on specific altcoins and topics related to Bitcoin. So until next time, take care.